So it's April Fool's Day, and as you saw in the title, we're going to be making an anti-support build. Regardless of what campaign you take this build to, I can almost guarantee it's going to make it more difficult for your party. This build is meant to just be a joke, and I definitely wouldn't play this in a more serious campaign, but it could be funny to take to a one-shot or something like that if everyone is okay with it. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the race. We're going to be going with Changeling. There's a lot of interesting and funny things you can do, being able to change your appearance all the time. In the case of this build, if your party dies or kicks you out because of your trolling, you could change your appearance and join another party. You could change your appearance to look like one of your enemies and join them, or specifically if your party kicked you out and didn't die, you could leave, change your appearance, and just come back looking like someone else. And then for our ability scores, assuming point buy, we're going to have a strength of 13, a dexterity of 8, a constitution of 9, plus 1 from our race for a total of 10, an intelligence of 13, a wisdom of 14, and a charisma of 15, plus 2 from our race for a total of 17. And then if you're rolling for ability scores, you'll need at least a 13 in strength, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma to be able to do all of this build's multi-classes. And then for our ideal equipment, you'll want to have an arcane focus and a holy symbol, and then if you want to pretend to be trying, you can pick up some armor and a weapon as well. And with all of that said, we'll go ahead and move on to levels 1 through 6. We're going to be starting off with 6 levels of cleric. Starting off with spells, in terms of cantrips, you can just pick up any damage cantrip, and then you can use it on your downed allies and just say it's spare the dying. For first level spells, we'll pick up Bane, Sanctuary, and Shield of Faith. For Bane, you're just going to say it's bless, but tell your DM to subtract the d4 instead. And then for Sanctuary, you can actually cast this on your enemy. They don't have to be willing or anything, so you can just make your allies have to make a saving throw to even be able to attack your enemies. And then, if that's a little bit too much, you could do Shield of Faith instead to just give the enemy a +2 to their AC. And then for second level spells, we'll pick up Aid and Zone of Truth. You can cast Aid on up to 3 enemies within 30 feet, and it'll increase their current and maximum hit points to make the fight just that little bit harder. And then you can cast Zone of Truth on your entire party to get all kinds of awkward and conflicted situations. And then for third level spells, we'll grab Bestow Curse, Glyph of Warding, and Speak with Dead. For Bestow Curse, you can just say it's Remove Curse or a Lesser Restoration, but you're actually going to give them another debuff instead of taking one away. You can use Glyph of Warding to create traps in your party's base, and then Speak with Dead you can use to talk to your party members after they die from your trolling. And for our Divine Domain, we're going to be going with Twilight Domain to get the Channel Divinity, Twilight Sanctuary. This is well known to be one of the strongest channel divinities in the game, but you're not going to be giving it to your party, you're going to be giving it to your enemies whenever they end their turn within 30 feet of you. And that should actually be fairly often, as with some of the features we're going to get later on, you're going to want to be pretty close to your enemies. And then the last thing we're going to go over from Cleric is the ability score increase or feat we get at level 4, and I would go with Skill Expert to get Deception and take that +1 to Charisma. You'll probably have to do a decent amount of lying to keep up this act, so this should help with that a little bit. And then for levels 7 and 8, we're going to be taking 2 levels of Wizard. First we'll go over spells. Starting off with cantrips, I would go with Encode Thoughts and Friends. Encode Thoughts is kind of a weird one, but you can encode your own thoughts and then give it to your enemies to give them some free information. And then Friends you can use on someone you and your party are talking to, and then just immediately end the spell, making that person hostile towards you. And then for first level spells, I would go with Find Familiar, Silent Image, Silvery Barbs, and Unseen Servant. Find Familiar you can do all kinds of things with. I couldn't think of any specific examples for trolling with this one, but I'm sure there are plenty. With Silent Image, or really any other illusion spell, you can create illusions to try to trick your party. With Silvery Barbs, you can do the opposite of what it's usually used for and make your allies reroll high rolls and give enemies advantage. And then Unseen Servant you can use to take things from your party or take something from an NPC and blame it on someone in your party. And then for our Arcane Tradition, we're going to be going with School of Divination to pick up Portent. You can give good rolls to your enemies and bad rolls to your party, and the funny thing about this one is that they'll have no way to tell. And moving on to levels 9 through 15, we're going to be taking 7 levels of Paladin. First we'll get Lay on Hands. If you're in melee range with an enemy, you can pretend to attack them and just heal them instead. And then for our fighting style, we'll pick up Interception or Protection. This one might be a little bit more difficult to hide, but technically you can block the damage one of your party members is doing to an enemy. And then in terms of spells, a lot of the spells we can get here were already mentioned during the cleric portion, but since our charisma is higher than our wisdom, you could prepare some of those spells as a paladin instead to get a higher save DC. For our Sacred Oath, we're going to go with Oathbreaker, mainly for Aura of Hate, and we'll talk about Aura of Protection and Aura of Hate at the same time here. You're going to want to stay away from your party and close to your enemies that are fiends or undead to give them that buff to the damage from Aura of Hate, and you want to stop your party from getting the bonuses to saves from Aura of Protection. And then lastly, we'll get 1 ability score increase or feat during this time enchantment paladin, and we're going to go with the telekinetic, taking another +1 to charisma. In this build, we're not really using it with any cool mechanics. We're just pushing our party closer to the enemies and pulling the enemies closer to our party. And then on to levels 16 through 20, we're going to be taking 5 levels of sorcerer. For spells, cantrips, and first level spells are pretty much going to be the same choices as wizard, but this is pretty much the same situation as the paladin and cleric spells overlapping. These also could benefit from a higher save DC since our charisma is higher than our intelligence. But for second level spells, we'll pick up Crown of Madness, Detect Thoughts, Suggestion, and Wither and Bloom. You might not have space in your spell stone for all of these, but I do think they're all worth mentioning. With Crown of Madness, you can take control of a neutral or friendly NPC and turn them into an enemy. With Detect Thoughts, you can read the minds of your party members and maybe even tell your enemies what you learn. Suggestion is a pretty similar idea to Crown of Madness, but you can give more complex commands, it'll last longer, and you can use it outside of combat. And Wither and Bloom is typically a spell that you use to damage a group of enemies and heal one of your allies, but as usual, we're going to be doing the exact opposite. And then for third level spells, we're going to pick up Counterspell and Haste. Counterspell, probably pretty self-explanatory. You can counter the spell of one of your party members, and then Haste you can cast to make an ally think that they're getting buffed, and then at the start of their turn, you just drop concentration so they lose that turn. And then for our Sorcerer's Origin, we're going to be going with Wild Magic, just to get those wild magic surges and add a little bit of extra chaos. And then on to Meta Magic. By far the best one for this build is going to be Subtle Spell. This will let you hide a lot of the spells you're using against your party. And then for our last ability score increase or feat, we're going to go with Telepathic to get that +1 to charisma and finally get it to 20. And I think the best use for this is probably just going to be speaking to your enemies without your party knowing. And then lastly, we'll get Magical Guidance, which you'll probably use to reroll a deception or sleight of hand check when you're trolling your party. Yep, I think that's it. What have I done? So yeah, that's it for the build. Happy April Fool's Day. If you guys would like to watch a more optimal or serious build guide, I'll leave the last one I did right here. Either way, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.